Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining my session. My name is Milton Bradbury. I work for the British Council in Mexico. I am the academic cluster lead for adult courses in the Americas, meaning that I oversee the teaching that we do for adult learners in Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, and Chile. When I say oversee, what I mean is I work with a team looking at the materials that we use in the class. I make decisions about the products that we offer our students, and I also support with the training of teachers to ensure that they are developing throughout their teaching career, and also that they have the skills that they need to develop the products that we offer. So that's a little bit about me. What I'm going to talk about today is boosting writing skills. Now, writing is an essential part of learning English, as I will talk about today. And the purpose of this session is to talk a little bit about why it's important and how we can teach it in a way that's engaging and dynamic for learners. So let's begin. So the objectives, as I kind of already summarized, is to review the challenges we face when we're teaching writing. Because I specialize in teaching adult students, a lot of what I talk about is with that in mind, but I will do my very best to also highlight suggestions and techniques to use with young learners. Also, as I mentioned, we're going to look at some practical writing activities. Hopefully by the end of this session, you will go away with 3 or 4 activities or more that you will then be able to go and implement in your classes quite quickly and easily. And I'll finish by by analysing a little bit about how to give feedback on writing, because feedback is integral in the learning process and progressing, right? So the way that we give feedback, how we give feedback, when we give feedback is vital when developing writing. So let's begin. Let's talk about some of the challenges we face. Now, most teachers will probably agree that writing is one of the skills that is most avoided in the classroom. We probably don't spend as much time on writing as we do on the other skills, particularly speaking. Why is that? Well, first of all, it is quite difficult to develop. It's easy to provide a lot of practice for writing. So we can give a lot of writing homework, we can give a lot of writing activities, but in that practice, are we actually helping learners to improve their writing? Are we actually giving strategies to help them develop different sub-skills in terms of writing? So, improving register, working on range, looking at style, developing cohesion and coherence. Those are quite difficult skills. Those are quite difficult to develop. So for that reason, the subs are often avoided. It can be time consuming. There's a lot of thinking that is involved before we write. So kind of planning what we're going to write, thinking about how we're going to express ourselves, thinking about what we're going to say, then actually writing it and then getting feedback. It can be more time consuming than practicing something like speaking. It's also often perceived as boring, in my opinion, totally unfairly, but this is a perception that sometimes people have. I've many times said, today we've got to do a writing class, and then I get a response of, oh. But I'm hoping to highlight today why that is unfair and what we can do to help change that mindset, not only with students, but also with teachers. Writing can be quite difficult to assess. The assessment of writing can be quite subjective, even if we have a very detailed and thorough criteria. It can be quite difficult as it's quite subjective. And sometimes the assessment can seem a little ineffectual. It can seem that it's not really helpful in progression. And it's not just our fault as teachers or the context, it's also the materials that we use. If you look at most course books, writing is often relegated to the end of the unit or even the end of the course book. So even the materials that we use help promote this unfortunate consequence of avoiding developing writing. So these are some of the reasons why, in some cases, it's avoided. But why should we write? Why should we develop writing in the classroom? Writing is difficult to master, not only in your even in your first language, let alone your second language. I really developed my writing when I went to university. Before then, I mean, of course, I could write, but I didn't really have a very good understanding of the different skills that went into, producing a good piece of writing. But we need it for our job and for educational purposes. If we want to go study a master's, study abroad, study a doctorate, we need to have good writing skills. If you want to develop in your place of work, I mean, of course, it depends what you do, but most jobs need good writing skills. So it's necessary. Writing is also a very good measure of linguistic competence. Of course, speaking is as well, but writing also, writing in some ways is an even better measure, because it really gives people the opportunity to explore language and think about how they're going to articulate different ideas. When we speak, it's quite spontaneous, quite messy at times, but when we write, we have that time to think, correct ourselves, edit what we write, draft, redraft, and produce final versions. So it's a really good opportunity to really demonstrate how good our English is. It's also a very useful tool to help consolidate what we've learned in the class, so help consolidate the grammar that we teach in the class, the vocabulary that we teach in the class, the different skills. It's a good tool we can use to consolidate and demonstrate learning. And if we feel happy about our writing, if we're confident in our writing, it can be a very pleasurable and rewarding activity. So it can be part of a dynamic learning experience. Now, this final point is something quite particular to the British Council, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it's the same in your context. Our students ask for more writing. That's one of the things that we often see in our internal student satisfaction surveys, is that they want more writing practice. So it's our responsibility to respond to that and provide that. So that's why we should develop writing, why we should practice writing. So let's look at some of these writing activities. I'm going to begin with some of my favorite. So group messaging. Now, I don't know about you, but particularly since the pandemic, I would say probably 80%, maybe even more, of what I write is direct messaging. Now, that might be direct messaging with my manager on Teams, direct messaging with my team on Teams, talking to people on WhatsApp, talking to people, in social media. So we have a lot of this in real life. This has become a big part of what we do when it comes to writing. But we see that many materials, a lot of the materials that we use don't reflect that real world application of writing that is actually happening at the moment. So here's an activity you can do to help promote this, to help practice this very important way of writing. I like using something like Teams, but of course you can use WhatsApp. And you give students the task of, for example, this is just an example task. It doesn't have to be this task. It's the fact that you give them the opportunity to practice. I like this activity of arranging to meet up with your partners at the weekend and to decide what you're going to do together. Because I actually do this with my friends. I have a group chat on WhatsApp where I have my friends, and I'm like, well, what are we doing on the weekend? You give people a role. So, for example, student A is a bit of an introvert. Student B loves being outside and in the sun, and student C likes having a drink. Now, of course, this is for adults. If you are teaching this to young learners, you can change it. Student C likes playing sport, for example, whatever you want. So you're giving people these roles, and the activity is you have 5 minutes to make a decision about what you're going to do on the weekend. You're not allowed to talk to each other. You're not allowed to look at each other. All the communication has to happen either on your phone, on the computer, or if you're not allowed electronic devices in the class, you can pass around pieces of paper. And why is this good? Because it reflects a real style of writing that we do, that we do in real world, and often is not practiced much. So it's reflecting something real. Mini sagas for those who like something a bit more creative. This is an activity which for me works very, very well. I tell the class, you must write a very short story. A saga is a short story, which ends with the sentence, "I can't believe I got away with that." This is just an example. It doesn't have to believe that. It doesn't have to be that, but it could be something like, "That's the last time I'll believe you," or and that's why I went home at 9 o'clock. Whatever. No, everyone has to finish. Every group or every student who's writing has to finish with this sentence. You give them a specific period of time to write the story, and you give them an exact amount of words. Okay, so it can't be fewer like 78. It can't be more like 81. It must be exactly 80 words. Why does this work? Well, first of all, it promotes some creativity, right? Different people are going to think about different stories which end with that sentence. But the fact that students must write 80 words, what inevitably is going to happen? Inevitably, students are going to plan a little bit about what they write and going to write a first draft. The first draft will almost definitely not have 80 words. So what they'll have to do is redraft, edit their work, and think about how they can rephrase certain ideas or certain sentences so that it fits within this parameter. So it's promoting editing, redrafting of writing, which is something that we always do, but perhaps is not always taught in class. So I like this activity. This is a classic. You've probably seen this before, but picture-based writing is great. So provide students with a thought-provoking, excuse that typo there. I should have redrafted, I should have edited this presentation a bit better, but a thought-provoking image and ask them to write a short story inspired by the picture. Encourage them to describe the mood, the characters, the setting, etc. Now, this activity has become so easy now, because I generated this image using ChatGPT. I gave a prompt of provide me a picture of a forest which looks a bit scary and dark, and it provided me with this. So you can use ChatGPT to support with this type of activity. We'll talk to you about an idea called reverse reading. That's a horrible image, right? But bear with me for a second. What do I do with this? So I use this image to initiate a writing activity. Okay. First, I show students this image and say, "Oof, you know what? I have a reading text for you to read, but I can't find it. It's somewhere on my desktop. I was looking for it for hours and it's not there anymore. Oh God, what am I going to do? But because I'm a lazy teacher, I'm just going to give you the questions. You write the text." So you use that horrible picture of a desktop to say, well, sorry, you guys have to provide the text, but here are the questions. So what do students have to do? They have to write a text which responds to the comprehension questions. Okay, does that make sense? So within the text, they have to be able to, within the text that students develop, they have to be able to find the answers to these questions. So it's doing a reading comprehension, but in reverse. Why is this good? Well, first of all, again, it provokes creativity. It really gets people to think about where certain information should go, how it should be articulated. Should it be paraphrased or should it be directly lifted from the text? And it encourages the processes that you have to do when reading, but in reverse. Okay, so thinking about it as the author. I really like this as an activity. And then once you have the text, you give the text to another student or another group of students, and they have to answer the comprehension question based on the text that was written. So then you go forward to do a reading activity. And that reading activity will demonstrate whether the text was written correctly or not, for containing the information which is necessary. So this is what we call a reverse reading activity. I think it's very, very interesting. Why is it good? It helps promote planning of content and what to include in the text. And it basically means that students have to plan their writing. Now, the chat GPT or artificial intelligence suggestions, you probably all use it a lot. It's one of the most, it's the most fascinating tool for English language learning, teaching that I've seen in the 16 years I've been teaching to have appeared. You can do so much with it. But a very, very basic thing you can do is you can use it as a model. Okay, so for example, with one of my business classes, I asked them to write an elevator pitch. And what I asked them to do is, what I did was I asked ChatGPT to provide a model of the elevator pitch. I asked students to write their own, and then I asked students to compare what they wrote with the model. And when they do this comparison, they notice language that was lacking, and they went through the process of picking out useful phrases that they can go on and use. Or you can do it in reverse, okay? So you can ask ChatGPT to do it for you. So you ask ChatGPT, please write me a short paragraph on the best places to visit in Mexico. And then you can ask students to see what ChatGPT produced and identify and steal 5 phrases that you like and that you will use in your version of this activity, your turn of this activity. So you can use it to provide a model of what we would expect. This is just one of the ideas that you can use ChatGPT to develop writing. There are so many. You can even ask ChatGPT to give you ideas about how to develop writing. You may also know Quillbot. Quillbot is basically like word reference or on words, where it kind of checks your grammar, vocabulary, cohesion, everything. It's a really good tool to provide feedback. What I love about this is kind of almost does better than what teachers may do. Quillbot will highlight in different colors the different suggestions it's going to make. So, for example, here the orange is being used to highlight suggestions about style, and blue has been used to provide suggestions of word order or grammar. So it highlights the different types of errors and provides suggestions. And you can really use this. I use this for my own writing, so it's great for students. So there were some ideas. Let's move on to the topic of feedback, because feedback is vital. I really like this image here that you can see on the right. This is a dog owner telling the dog that he's been a bad dog, and the dog saying, "Could you be a bit more specific?" What does this highlight? It highlights that we really need to provide insight, on when we give feedback. So kind of going to the ideas, even of course the word is feedback, I like to think in my mind of it as feed forward. We shouldn't be using feedback as a way of evaluating. We should be using it as a way of giving insight. So giving suggestions of how to improve, not indications of what we're doing wrong. So kind of changing the kind of thought behind feedback. Somebody who's good at giving feedback will know that it's really important to focus on the positive, to really take on feedback, to understand it, to accept it, and to be happy to react to it. Delivering it in a positive way is so important. Okay, so focus on what students are doing well. Focus on what is good in their writing, what they're doing well. So you can say something like, I really liked the creativity in your story. I thought it was a fantastic idea. I liked your use of adjectives. It was very nice. And then you can go and focus on some of the areas that can improve, but give a lot of emphasis to the positive. Let the recipient lead. What do I mean by this? Give students independence and choice in the type of feedback they want and how they want to receive it and when they want to receive it. So you could do so many things with this. You could even ask students, what would you like me to give you feedback on? You choose, and they can say, well, I want to give me feedback on the way I use present simple, the way my adjectives, and my sentence length. You have to train learners to be able to do this, of course. It doesn't happen instantly, but by giving students ownership over the feedback you're providing them, it's much more personalized and motivating. And making it part of a development dialogue. What do I mean by this? I mean that once you give feedback, it doesn't end there. The next time you talk to this student about their writing, return to that feedback that you gave before. Say, oh, this time you have done this much better. You've been much more, ambitious with your use of adjectives, which is what I gave you feedback on before, for example. So returning to the areas that we've given feedback on, and continuing to do that. And being insensitive to the impact of your message. So of course, I was talking earlier about giving positive feedback, but thinking about how can I articulate this in a way which is really going to be listened to and understood, focusing on the way that you communicate. Who should give feedback? Now, of course, most students will probably think the teacher is the one who should give feedback. And of course, the teacher should give feedback. We are the experts, right? We are the ones who know how to get to what the students are hoping to achieve. But by no means should we be the only people giving feedback. Group feedback is really important. Okay, learning as part of a group. There are masses of studies which demonstrate that it's often easier to take on feedback given by a group. It's motivating. It also develops analytical skills for the people giving feedback, and the same for peer and self feedback. When I mean that is self-evaluating your own work. So encouraging students to do that. This develops learner autonomy. It provides skills that learners will then be able to use beyond the classroom, and encourages a more thoughtful process to writing. So it shouldn't just be coming from one person. I hope this diagram demonstrates that it should be coming from various sources. And when I say making writing feedback as part of a developmental process, here is an example of giving feedback as a process. So I don't expect teachers to do this with every single writing task because it's a lot of work. But if you can do this with one or two tasks in a term, or even in a year, it can be very beneficial. So going through the practice activities, providing some suggestions and notes, and then getting students to do several drafts, and in between each draft, giving feedback that students can respond to. And it's really important to do all of this before we start to evaluate. Here I've got a short video of a way that I like to give feedback on drafts to my students. Sometimes I don't, I like to write down the feedback, but sometimes I feel that my students would benefit from letting me articulate the feedback rather than it just being written. So I use a casting tool to help promote this. Here's a short video to explain.
This is a short video to showcase screencasting. Screencasting is a Google add-on which you can download as long as you have a Google account. Once you download it, it stays up in this top corner. You just need to press it. I can't show you now because I'm actually using it to make this video. You have some edit options here which are handy. Here are all the recordings that I've made this month, since the beginning of February, so you can see I use it quite a lot. The cool thing about Screencastify is because it's connected to your Google account, all videos instantly get saved on your Drive. I'm going to show you an example of how I use it. Let's look at, why don't we look at Miguel? Hi Miguel, thanks for your email, your essay, and well done. It's great. I think you've clearly thought it through and clearly spent some time doing it. You've got a very good range of vocabulary, a good range of sentence structures, and kind of different areas of grammar. It's quite advanced actually. It's very good. I've made some comments which I'd like you to have a look at and see if you can rephrase. Just to give you a little idea, for example, here I'm going to tell you about the existence of many fake news, and here it says, I agree that there are many fake news. It's the same problem. So it's something to do with countable, uncountable. Have a think about it and try to fix it. Okay. There's a few other comments I've made. Just look through it and read it yourself. If you have any questions, you can ask me. And the final kind of general bit of feedback I'll give you is think about how to make your essay more cohesive. So you have used some cohesive devices, like in my opinion, great, fantastic. Thirdly, etc. Fantastic, finally, good. But your paragraphs are generally one sentence. In English, it's very unusual to have a complete paragraph as one sentence. So think about how you can make that more digestible. Okay, thank you very much, Miguel. So as you can see, I used it in combination with track changes of Google Drive. That took me in total about 4 minutes to do. The track changes took me about 3 minutes, and the video took me about 1.5 minutes. So it was quite quick. And I feel it's quite personable. I hope you found it interesting.
So there you go. You have a tool that you can use. So instead of arranging a time to meet one-to-one with your students, you can actually record yourself giving feedback on a writing task, and actually give some suggestions in the form of a video, which makes it a bit more personal and just a bit more friendly, and it gives that kind of level of personal attention that students require or desire, right? So that's a tool that I like to use. Just some more general tips. Be selective about the way that we give feedback. You don't need to correct absolutely everything every time you give some feedback on writing. Choose a particular area of grammar or a particular focus and focus on that so it can be a bit more easy to digest. Give lots of positive feedback and less corrective feedback to make it motivating. Try to vary the focus of it. Let students know in advance what you'll be giving feedback on so they know what to focus on when they're writing. Make it specific to different types of tasks. So if you're writing a direct messaging activity, so like one of the activities I spoke about first, maybe grammatical accuracy is not so important there. Maybe what's really important is reaching an agreement, for example. Think about what think about the feedback that the task requires. Think about how different learners like to receive feedback. So this might be, the way they like to learn, might be even personality, might be age, whatever it is. Think about how to adapt that in your feedback. Encourage self-evaluation and peer feedback. These are all really important. And how to kind of influence learner attitudes. So really think about, what their preferences are. I hope, at the beginning of the course, ask students, what type of writing tasks do you want to practice? How do you want me to give you your feedback? How frequently? How thorough? And respond to what students say to you. Talk about how you give feedback with your learners. So it doesn't have to be this kind of secretive thing that people get worried about. Open up the dialogue about feedback. As I mentioned before, focus it on it. Use feedback to promote motivation and enhance confidence, and focus more on feedback rather than assigning grades. I think we kind of give too many grades and we don't give enough formative feedback. Feedback should be there to help us learn, not to categorize us. Experiment with different formats. So I showed you a way of casting your screen. You can use audio, you can use different things. And think about how to integrate it into your teaching. Where are you going to give feedback? How much feedback are you going to give? Is it going to be personal? Is it going to be as a group? Is it going to be, is it going to be one-to-one? Is it going to be in front of everyone? Think about different ways and incorporating that into your teaching. And again, one final tip for ChatGPT. You can even ask ChatGPT to give you feedback on writing. So you can encourage students to do a writing task, put it into ChatGPT, and ask ChatGPT to give you feedback and explain the changes it makes. You'd be surprised how great it is. And just to finish, here are two very great articles on how to develop teaching. Please send me an email. I can send you my presentation and you can click on these links. These are two really great sources of information about how to develop writing with some practical tips and activities. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much. Here is my email. Please do send me an email to get in touch if you want my presentation, and also if you want to connect or talk about the different writing activities that you do in the class. I love meeting other English language teaching professionals and sharing ideas and hearing their stories. So please do connect. It'd be great to hear from you. And thank you very much for joining my session. Enjoy BBELT. Hopefully see you around. Thank you.